Hello, welcome to Saturday's edition of Cracking the Cryptic. Now today we've got what looks to be a really interesting Sudoku for you. And this is a new Sudoku that has been constructed by one of the world's great puzzle makers in response to a video that we did last week. So last week I did a puzzle by Bastien Vial-Gem in which two orthogonally connected squares could not add up to more than 14. And the Dutch constructor Aad Van De Wetering apparently really liked the idea, and so he's constructed this puzzle where two orthogonally connected cells can have a maximum difference of 5. So let's pick this 8 as an example. So if we look at this 8, these 4 squares here could not be a 1 or a 2, because obviously 8 minus 2 is 6. 6 is bigger than 5, so 2 would not be allowed, neither would 1. Now this is a fascinating idea, and you can see what Aad has managed to do is to construct a puzzle with 11 givens, and I imagine this will be quite difficult. Aad's puzzles tend to be extremely elegant, have very tight solution paths. So I am really looking forward to trying this and hoping the video won't be too long. Now, if you want to have a go, and I do recommend it, then click on the link under the video. And as usual, you'll come to our webpage where you should be able to play the puzzle on whichever device is your preference. And with that, I am going to have a look at this puzzle. Now, the first thought I have is if we have a maximum difference between two cells of 5, two connected cells, then some digits are going to be heavily restricted and others are going to be completely unrestricted. So 4 and 6, for example, we can get to every number between 1 and 9 by adding 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5, or deducting 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 from these cells. So 4 and 6 are completely unrestricted in terms of what can connect to them. 9s and 1s are the most restricted, then 8s and 2s, then 3s and 6s. So I'm going to start with 1s and 9s. So which one? Should we start with 1s? Let's have a look at 1s first of all. So there can't be any 1s in those squares. There can't be a 1 here because it would be next to a 9. So there's a 1 in 3 positions in this box. And with variant Sudoku, unlike classic Sudoku, I do like to make pencil marks in 3 cells sometimes. That's just me. I have to pencil mark those 8s because I've just seen them. But let's go back to 1s. 1 at the bottom here, look. Because 1 can't be next to a 9, there's a 1 in one of those 3 squares. One can never be... look, this over here. 1 can never be next to an 8. So 1 is in one of those squares over here, which gives us a digit. So there's now a 1 in this position. 1 in 1. 1 can't go here, of course, because it's next to an 8. Sorry, should have spotted that immediately. It really messes with your scanning, or my scanning at least. When you have these unusual constraints between two connected cells. Now, down here 1 can't go next to a 7, but 1 can be in any of those 4 squares. I'm going to pencil mark it, why not? And down here 1 can't be next to the 9, so 1 is in 3 positions down here. So we've got a plethora of pencil marked 1s, but only 2 digits. So let's look at 9. 9s are good. This 9 here rules out a 9 from those squares, and I can't put a 9 next to a 2. Difference would be too big, it would be 7. So this is a 9. So there's a 9 in one of those 3 squares. These 9s here means there's a 9 in one of these 3 squares. Well, there's a little bit of restriction here because we can't put a 9 next to a 3. There must be a 9 in one of those 2 positions, which is interesting now. That means this square can't be a 1 because if I put a 1 here, whichever one of these I make a 9 will breach the condition. So that's rather nice. This is not 1. Now the 1 shifts down to one of those squares, which means that this is not a 1. And there's a little bit of... If we look at this box now and think about 7s, we've got a 7 here, so there's no 7 in those squares. But there can't be a 7 in either of these two positions as well, because if we put a 7 in either of these positions, we'll have to put a 1 next to it, and that will break the puzzle. So there's a 7 in one of those 3 squares. I'm going to pencil mark that as well. Now, 9's in this box. Can't put a 9 next to a 2. So the 9 is in one of those 3 squares. And in this top box, I don't think we know, well, I think we can limit the 9s to 4 positions, but I don't really, I'm not sure I see the value of pencil marking that, so I'm not going to. Right, okay, well let's look at another 8. The 8 here on the central box again. There's no 8s in those positions. We can't put an 8 next to a 2. So now in fact 2s are also in. I was just thinking about 2s in relation to this box, because 2s can't go next to a 9. So this square is a 2. Twos can't go next to 9s again. So there's a 2 in one of those 2 squares. So that means 2 can go next to 7. So I have to be a bit careful there. So the 2 is up. It's in one of these 3 squares here. In this box, 2 can't go next to an 8. So we can actually rule out loads of squares. So the 2 must be in one of those positions, therefore this square becomes a 2. Now does this 2 do anything for us? With the 8s here... Oh, hang on, this is beautiful. Look at this 8. The 8's here, and look at the effect on this box. So we rule out those squares naturally. There can't be an 8 next to a 2. So you might think that's as far as we can go, but look at this. You can't put an 8 in that square, because to do so would force a 1 into one of these 2 positions where it would be next to an 8. So the 8's are in one of those 2 squares, which means there's no 8 here, which means this is an 8. That's only... Oh, there's loads going on now. There's loads going on. I can immediately see, look, we've got 9s pencil marked into those 2 squares, so it's no longer possible for there to be a 1 in either of these positions, because to do so would place a 9 next to it. So there is no 1 in those squares. So the 1 shifts upwards, and that is not a 1 now. The 8 is in one of these 3 positions. Oh, this is so clever. The design of this is just so clever. Look at this. It's the same type of trick again with the 8s. Now I can't put an 8 into this square because the pencil marking of the 2s prevents me from doing that. If I put an 8 here, there will be a 2 either here or here, and that will break the puzzle. So the 8 is in one of those 2 squares where it meets a pencil mark 2. So these 2 squares are a 2-8 pair. This square can't be a 1 anymore, so the 1 shifts downwards. So this isn't a 1, this is a 1, and now this can't be an 8. Wow. Wow, okay. So now that must be useful. This can't be an 8 now, so that's an 8. So now the 8's in one of those 3 positions. Eight. Yes, this is good. This is good. Again, look, let's have a look at this box now. And the same trick's going on. The 8 cannot be in either of the positions where the 1's are pencil marked, because again we'll put a 1 next to an 8. So 8 is ruled out from all those squares. That means this is an 8. This is very, very, very clever setting. Now, come on, let's think about this. So we've done some work with 1's, we've done some work with 2's. Now let's look at this row, because we need to put a 3 into it. Now there can never be a 3 next to a 9, so there can only be a 3 in that square, which means there's a 3 up the left hand side. These 2 squares have got to be 5 and 6. There's a 6 there, so that, oh no, that's a 5. This is a 6. That means if we look at this column, these 3 squares must be 3, 4 and 7 to complete the column. Now we can never put a 7 next to a 1, so there's a 1 there and a 1 there. Neither of those squares can be 7, so that's a 7 at the top. Oh, now 7 is interesting now because of this one. There can't be 7's in any of those squares, so the 7 is in one of these 2 positions. So there's no 7 here anymore. So the 7 is in one of those 2 squares. Can we do anything with that? Oh, I'll tell you something we can do. Oh, we could do loads. Look, this 3 is impacting on the 9's. I just noticed 9's were locked into the same 2 columns of the grid, and I was about to place a 9 in this square, but actually down here we can go better because we've got the 3. This can never be a 9, so the 9 is here, which means this is a 9, this is a 7, this... Oh wow, now we really are, I think, starting to make progress. This must be a 9, therefore this is a 2. This isn't a 9 anymore. This is not a 2 anymore. So the 2 is in one of these squares. Now, so let's look at this box and ask where 2 can go. It can't go here, it can't go next to a 9, so it must be in one of those 2 squares. Which means there must be a 2 in one of these 2 positions, because there can't be a 2 next to a 9, and we have a 2 down there. So that's a 2, well that's a 2. This is a 3-7 pair. One can't go next to a 7. Oh, and that shifts the 1 into that square. That gives us a 1 here, 2. Wow. All of a sudden, I think we're making much better progress. These squares have got to be 4, 5 and 6. That's completely unrestricted. 3's, look, in these 2 boxes are locked into the same 2 rows of the grid. So the question we should be asking when we get this pattern is, where do we put a 3 in the other row? It can't be here, it can't be here, it can't be here. So it must be in one of those 2 squares. I think both of those are available. Down at the bottom though, where do we put a 3 in this box? We can't put a 3 next to a 9, so we don't know where the 3 goes, but we know it's in the bottom row. And there's a 3 there, and again in this box we can't put the 3 next to the 9, so that's a 3. That's a 3. Can't put the 3 next to the 9. So is this a 3-8 pair? Well, it is, except we can't put a 3 next to that 9 either. So So that's a 3. That's an 8. That can't be a 9. This can't be a 3 anymore. The 8s are shifted over into this one of these two positions. Sorry about this. Let me just stare at this for a moment. Oh, we've got 4, 5 and 6 again in this box that we haven't solved. There's a 6 there though, so we can get rid of that 6 pencil mark. So there's a 6 in one of these two squares now, which means that's not a 6. Oh, that can't be, that can't be a 4 or a 6, so that in fact is a 5. Should have got that before. Now this must be a 5. 4, 6 here, so we're going to be able to get this cell. That's got to be a 5. Shifts a 5 over here. This square here must be a 6. I keep having to stop myself from trying to see whether 6 can be next to other numbers. 6 is completely unrestricted. I just need to remember it. Now, what next? I feel I must, yes, 1 here. Look, 1 can't be next to 9. That forces that to be a 1, that to be a 3. That forces that to be a 3 at the top. 3 can be next to 8 though, so that's not quite good enough. We still need to put a 7 into one of those squares, and 7 can't be next to the 1, so the 7 shifts upwards. This must therefore be a 4. That forces this to be a 4. And there must be a 7 in one of these two squares. 7 can't be next to a 1, of course, though. So that's 6, that's 7. 7 can't be next to a 1. So that's 7 and that's 4. This must be 5. That shifts a 5 over here, look. So we get 5, 8, 9 triple here, and we're going to be able to put the 6 into this square. That's going to resolve the 4, 6 on the left-hand side. So now this square can only be a 5 or an 8. Let's pencil mark that in and just see if it tells us anything. There must be a 7 in one of those two squares, but we can never have a 7 next to a 1. So that shifts the 7 and the 5 here. These squares have got to be 4, 5 and 6. Therefore this one is a 4, this one is a 6, this one is a 5, and that I think is going to be the final step that we needed. What a beautiful puzzle this is. This is a 4 here to complete the column. This 4 sees that 4, that sees the 7s. Now we know there's a 7 in one of those two squares, which must be here because of the 7 down at the bottom. That must be a 5, I think. We still need to put a 9 in the grid. I surely must have resolved the positions of the 9s before now. Let's just... 9s and 6s is what we're after, and the 6 here is going to help us, isn't it? So this is a 6, this is a 9, this is a 9, this is an 8. That's a 6, and I think that's a 4. Loved it. What a puzzle. Thank you very much for sending it in. Aad, who communicates with us about Aad Van De Wetering's puzzles. Really, really appreciated. Let me know in the comments whether you enjoyed it as much as I did, and whether you found it straightforward. I think we approached it the right way. Starting with the 1s and the 9s was definitely a decent method. And we'll be back tomorrow with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.